introductory slides.
Yes,
The couple of slides I want to show you. You've already introduced us, but for me, my name is Dick Langeveld. I head up the business development team for the UK. My role is limited, but I just wanted to briefly tell you who we are for those of you that don't know Engage Process yet, because a small part of the business case that Amy and Lynn are going to present to you use Engage Process. So it does make sense to shortly explain who we are and, well, process management, the benefits of process management. That is all what we are about. So I'd love to stress that point with you briefly as well. Now, Engage Process is a process management tool, an application that strives to make process management easy for everybody involved. So we'd like to be the easiest tool out there, because not everybody knows process management, but everybody should be included in process management. So that's why we've created our software. And with that, we would like to position ourselves a little bit in between all the applications that operational staff typically in the organization knows and uses for mapping and discussing processes, visual PowerPoints readily available for everybody, but not really carry the weight needed to perhaps address the needs of you as a specialist that tend to go towards RPA and BPMN and process mining sort of software. But those, again, in their, with all due respect, typically aren't understood or available for operational staff. So right in the middle there, we saw the sweet spot for us to operate in as an easy-to-use application, understandable by everybody involved, but obviously carries enough weight to support all the needs of the specialists involved as well. Now, what we see happen, and that's a general thing, that typically, and that's always been the case, obviously, organizations, they have a lot of objectives that they work towards, and the way in which they work towards that is typically they have a lot of different projects. They have projects towards efficiency, towards transformation, towards effectiveness. It's a common theme in a lot of organizations, but also it's a common theme that a lot of these different projects have conflicting goals. Leadership is spread out. There's all these different budgets floating about. The thing they have in common, though, is they all have an impact on how the work in your organization is carried out, how services are delivered within your organization. And from an operational perspective, people are in different groups, are asked different things, they're servicing different project groups, and which one takes priority, right? It can become a little bit chaotic. And in all that chaos, are we still servicing the customer or putting the customer first? Now, what happens more and more is organizations that are project-driven tend to start to change around and become a process-driven organization. In other words, they use processes and getting in control of processes as a foundation to align all the projects they are running towards specific objectives. So to visualize that a little further, and that's where we see a role for process management and us as a process management software tool. If in an organization or in the environment you work in, rules and regulations change, obviously you need to adapt the way you deliver a service and change the way the process is set up. But that would no doubt have an impact on how the IT systems are organized and how your potential robotics are influenced. Or if cost savings is an objective, then obviously you want to run your processes, deliver your services as efficiently as possible. But every time you change something, it has an influence on a lot of different aspects of the organization as well. And process management ideally helps to get and stay in control of all of that. That has some massive benefits. It impacts all your projects, but all at once. It makes them all a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper to run, but it synchronizes them all as well. And if you do that in a way where you get to includes all the operational stuff in the process. You come to a state we call people-driven change, or an agile organization, or at least change will become a little more sustainable. And that has a lot of impact for a lot of organizations from a lot of different angles. So process management does have a lot of impact on a lot of different aspects. So that's why this slide comes in. For one organization, it's digital transformation. For another organization, it's compliancy. For a third organization, it's just running cost savings projects throughout the organization. It can be any, it can be all. Yeah, and that's basically what I briefly wanted to touch on with you guys before handing you over to Amy and Lynn.
Oh, you want me to share our slides?
Oh, sorry, I could go. I keep going on the same presentation.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, please.
All right, sorry, I'll reshare. Just a sec. We've practiced and we've practiced, and then this happens, right?
Sorry. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just sort of let you know how the team is structured, really. So we, as a transformation team, have grown quite a lot in the last few years. We started out as a core team of around 5, and as you can see now, have grown from that. So we have Claire as our associate director, and then Joe, the business transformation manager, sort of oversees the more digital and technical elements of the team, and I oversee the project management elements of the team. And that seems to work quite well in terms of the way that we then approach projects. So on the next slide, we'll talk around how we're working. So ideas for service improvement come from the services themselves. We have lots of conversations with them. We also make ourselves very available, essentially, so they can contact us, they know how to contact us, and can do that, really. And then we will work with them. So the project manager, Lynn, goes in with the services and scope out what they're thinking of, and then we can really understand how their process is at the moment, and then start to discuss any changes that might be useful, or improvements that can be made to their processes there. And we use Engage to do that element of work, and it really helps them to visualize their processes. The sort of graphics that are used in that Engage software really help the team to understand where the waste is in their process, really, and how we can make improvements there. And then we will work with them to develop a new process, and again using Engage to map that out. What does that look like? How does it work flow through that process, and who's doing what task, really? Then we have an in-house team of developers, as you saw, and they will build systems on our low-code digital platform that we use. And then that means that we can really create these bespoke processes for departments. So we're sort of making it work, making sure that the system works in the most optimized way, rather than making a system work for us. So that's sort of how we go about things. And then there's a continuous improvement essentially with that. So that has meant that we're seeing these sort of results. So we've seen a 50% reduction in missed bin reports, simply by seeing where contact was coming in, why it was coming in, and then surfacing that data to customers so that they then don't have to go through the whole report process. And you can see there, I won't necessarily go through all of them, but we can just see how we've increased income and savings just by making sure that our processes are more efficient, and we're reducing the time that officers are spending sort of manually going through these. So then what we wanted to do today was actually go through one of our processes. So Lynn is going to share one of our more simple processes that we've put through Engage. And this was for a food voucher scheme that we ran. And just a bit of background, the food voucher scheme it was a county run scheme, but it was to provide supermarket vouchers to those on low income or vulnerable residents that we have. It was a scheme that we sort of got told about last minute, one of these things that's like, you've got this funding, you've got to spend it in that amount of time, and this is what it's for. So we had to react very quickly. So you can see here with this process, we haven't automated everything. We've got letters that have to go out because we needed to make sure that there was a sort of verification process, so we knew that the person that was claiming it is the person that was supposed to be claiming it, so we needed to make sure we did that. But we did build an online system for residents to claim their vouchers. You know, not everyone has access to the online systems, so we did obviously have an option there that residents could also contact our customer services team and they would complete that online form for them. But what we were finding, we had to oh, it's gone. We had to download exports.
Sorry.
We had to send this information over to the county because they essentially administered the scheme. They sort of sent over all of the vouchers to us. So there was sort of that loop in there where we had to do the export and things, and then there was a break in the process where we had to wait for that to come back. The really messy element of the process was actually at the end, where we had, especially for those people that were online and had an email address, they received their food vouchers quite easily. For those that they didn't have an email address, we had to post these out. But what we had to do is sort of redeem those vouchers on their behalf, and there was no other way of us doing that. So we had to do this sort of very lengthy process in terms of actually printing and issuing those vouchers, and that caused huge delays essentially, and meant that there were then customer contact resulting from that, because these people, you know, by nature really needed these food vouchers. And so because of the delays in our process, we were then getting customer contact, which was obviously then taking up a lot more of officer time. So this end of the process was very manual. And so we did some analysis. As you can see, we've put it in Engage and put times next to each thing. So Lynn, I don't know if you want to run through now sort of how we can interrogate this information once it's in there.
Yeah, so at each stage we will put in how long it took, and for this particular process, it's how long the whole thing took. Normally, we would say how long does it take to do one of a process, but this time we actually mapped out the whole thing. So how long it took us to send out 3,500 or 4,000 letters, which is typically how many we had to send out. So we put in the officer and then how long we would expect them to take on each step. And then we can run the analysis, which will show us how long. Has that worked? No.
Yeah, we can see above each stage.
Oh yeah, you can see it now. Yeah. And then that would show us, you know, the actual cost and times involved for the whole thing.
And what we've also done, you can see the green and sort of yellow and red squares. This is sort of where the value is. So you can see as we get towards the end of the process, this customer contact really didn't add any value to our process at all. So we knew that this was where we needed to sort of focus our attention. So these schemes sort of kept coming round almost on a quarterly basis in the end.
Yeah.
So because of that, we knew that we had to make changes to this process. So if we have a look at the sort of the 2B as it was then, you'll see there wasn't much we did at the beginning. We kept that pretty much as it was. It was quite static. There wasn't much we could do there. But then when it got to the end of the process, what we could do is actually surface information to customer services, because at the beginning the system was built as sort of an MVP, and it didn't actually surface any of the information to customer services. It just was allowing them to input data. So we actually opened up that back end to them so that when they actually received a query, they could see when they'd called, when the food voucher had been requested, when the export had gone over, that sort of information, and they could give a little bit more out to residents as they called. You know, we know that we're not going to be able to eradicate all customer contact, so at least we could provide, you know, useful information there. But then what we did when it came to actually redeeming vouchers is we introduced RPA technology, so that instead of a person having to redeem these vouchers, a bot did it. So they read the information that came back from county and redeemed those vouchers, and then they did it as sort of a merged PDF, and then that was sent out by our sort of printing company at the time. So what that did is obviously extremely streamline the process, but it saved a huge amount of time. And what we could do is then analyze the two processes together and compare them. And then you can see here that actually we saved huge amounts of time, and then therefore huge amounts of money in theory on the process. But really what we were looking at is processing time. And you can see there the difference was around 37.5 hours of time that was spent on administering this process from our side, just by introducing this technology to streamline that back end process. And again, for customer services, we managed to reduce the amount of time that they were spending dealing with customer contact just by making sure that the process was quicker to run, but also giving them the information that they needed to sort of respond to those requests. As I said, this was something that we had to react to. It was something that sort of came our way, and so we didn't have the time at the beginning to sort of scope all of this out and look at how it would all work together. But what we can also do is then use this evidence that we've got now as forming part of a business case for RPA use in the future in other aspects of the organisation, because we can actually demonstrate what a difference it can make in one simple process, and then that can then sort of be sort of duplicated across the authority, really, wherever there is a business case for that. So yeah, that was what we wanted to share this morning.
That's brilliant. Thank you, both of you. And what's even better is you've done it with some time to